In this video, we're going to talk about averages. So let's start with an example. Let's suppose you are working on a group project for a class. There's 5 members in your group, and each member is asked to write how many minutes they commute to school from their home. So let's say those minutes are 15, 6, 20, 11, and 35. And you are asked, what is the average travel time for your group? Now, most people would start by adding up the 15, the 6, the 20, and the 35. I'm sorry, and I forgot the 11. So let's add those numbers up. I grab my calculator. You should grab yours too. And I got 87. And then most people would take 87 and divide that number by 5. And get 17.4. And they would go, okay, so the average is 17.4 minutes. Okay, so building on that idea then, let's create a set of 7 numbers that have an average of 2 degrees Celsius. 2 degrees Celsius. So we want them to average out to 2 degrees Celsius. Well, there's a few ways to do this. One is to kind of like cheat. In other words, if I took 2 degrees Celsius plus 2 degrees plus 2, 7 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, there we go. Add that up 7 times. That's going to come out to 14. And divided by 7, I'm like, boom, 2. Okay, so 2, 7 times works. Now, it's a little bit of a cheat to make it work. So a more creative way would be to kind of start with 2 and then go like 1 up and 1 below, right? So averaging 1, 2, and 3, and then 1 up and 1 below, and then 1 up and 1 below. Now that's a literal negative because we're talking about temperature, and you can have negative temperature. And if I were to add these numbers together, -1 plus 0 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5, that comes out to 14 again. And when I divide that by 7, I get 2. Okay. So what we just did here, this idea of kind of trying to keep it balanced, right? Like 2 is at the center of my thing. And then I went like a little bit above and a little bit below. I could play that game as much as I want. I could have gone 2 above and 2 below. All right. And it would still end up working out to 2, depending on how far I want to like kind of, move in increments from, space to space. Okay. Well, that idea is kind of explaining average. Average is a general term to mean the center, the measure of the center. And usually when we hear the word average, we think mean. That's what we did in number 1. What we did right here was find the mean. But average doesn't have to be the mean. It could also be median or mode. So most people have heard those 3 words, mean, median, mode. Let's review what those are. In fact, they ask us to find them, but we're going to do that after we kind of read what they are. So let's talk about that. Mean, really quick, let's loosely discuss it. Mean is the way we add up the numbers and divide by how many there are. Okay. So it uses all of the data to find a center. Wow, that's not how you spell data. All of the data to find the center. And the process is we add them all up and divide by how many there are. Okay. Median literally means the middle piece of data. But in order to find the middle data, you kind of have to put the data in order. All right. And then mode is the most like the one that occurs more than once. Occurs most often. So they actually give us formal definitions for all 3 of these on the next page. So here, let's scroll down and look at them. The mean is the number we'd use to fairly share a set of data. So if we were to spread out the temperature change equally all over the world, everyone would have an increase of 2 degrees Celsius. But really, not everyone has actually 2 degrees Celsius change, okay? Some have more than 2 degrees Celsius, some have lower than 2 degrees Celsius. It just balances out to a 2 degrees Celsius change or an increase, all right? So they give an example of how you find the mean, you add them all up and divide by how many there are. And they do mention how you could do this in Google Sheets or Excel. You use the feature called average to do that. Okay, for median, it's the middle number. So half of any data set is less than the median and half of any data set is more than the median. So we say the median splits an ordered data set right down the middle. So if we were to find the median of this data set here, you'll notice that the first thing they do is put it in order. They go from the smallest number to the biggest number. So that's what they're doing right down here. And in the middle of that is the number 4. So 4 is the median. All right. So what happens if you have an even number of values? If there were 8 pieces of data, in that case, you find the mean of the middle 2. So you find the middle 2 and take the mean of them, or add them together and divide by 2. Wow, that's the word 2, and it didn't look like the word 2. There we go. That's better. So you find the middle 2 and take the mean. All right. So if this happened to have had a 9 in the data set, here, I'll throw a 9 up there. Pretend there was a 9. That means 4 and 5 are in the middle now. So you would add 4 and 5 and divide by 2, which comes out to 4.5. So basically, we're finding the middle of 4 and 5. 4.5 happens to be in the middle. Okay, that's what you would do if there was an even number of values. Okay, mode is the number that shows up the most. The mode isn't clearly as defined as mean and median. We really use this when we're looking at a range of values that occur most, not just really a single value. It's where the data is kind of concentrated. So typically, the mode is just the number that occurs most often. In this example, 3 occurs twice, so 3 is the mode. And then they kind of begs the question, what happens if there is no value that is most frequent? And the answer is, then there is no mode. There is no mode. What if 2 values occur twice? Well, then they're both part of the mode. They call that bimodal, meaning there are 2 modes. All right. So it is possible to have more than one value, a tie of values. Okay, so let's come back up here to our data set, and we're going to find the median and the mode. So let's look at the data again, back all the way up here at the top. So 15, 6, 20, 11, 35. So if we want to find the median, we're going to need to put it in order. So starting with the smallest, that would be 6. And then the next would be 11. And then 15, and then 20, and then last would be 35. Okay, so the middle value, that's the median. Now comparing that to the mean was 17.4. They're not too far off. Okay, not too bad, right? Not too far. Okay, so what would be the mode for this? Well, the answer is there is no mode for our data set here, because nobody happened to have had the same amount of time that they traveled. So if there was, then that would have been the mode, but that happens a lot with mode. So which do you think of these measures of center best describes a typical member of your group? Now, most people, when they are offered to say which do they think is the best, most people would probably lean towards saying the mean. The reason a lot of people like saying the mean is because the mean takes into account every piece of data. So somehow it feels like it's just more accurate. But the median is a really good example of what you would maybe want to use if, say, one person happens to represent like an outlier, a group, or some sort of person that really isn't the average. So like if somebody had said they were 135 minutes away, not just 35, but 135. So we like threw a 1 in front of here, the median wouldn't change. If there was a 1 in front of that 35, the median wouldn't change, even though everybody else is lower than 20 minutes, right? 20 minutes or lower. 135 minutes over 2 hours away is quite far, right? And mean, though, would change. The mean would actually really jump up by that 135. So the mean is really good to use if the data is relatively grouped up, which our data is. So the mean is good since our data is close together. But the median would be good when you might have somebody whose data value is going to throw everybody off. And we call that person an outlier. So the median is good when a data value, oops, sorry, let's fix that. Data value is very different, which we call that an outlier. And that's what mean, median, mode are, and therefore that's what averages are.